Hey guys, welcome back. So last time we continued with our edit video page and we got this video player outputting, and then we also made a start on getting the thumbnails which will be appearing next to the video like this. So let's continue with that. So in the select thumbnail.php class, what we're going to do is scroll up to this create function, and last time we did this where we get the thumbnail MySQL data. So now we have all the thumbnail data for this video. What we're going to do next is say HTML equals an empty string, and then under that we'll do a for each loop, and we'll loop over this thumbnail data. So for each thumbnail data as, and then we'll just say data. So every time this loop goes around, we're going to have data, which is the MySQL data for that thumbnail. And all we want to do is say HTML dot equals, which appends the string to a current value, and we'll say this arrow create thumbnail item. So let's create this function. So I'm copying that function name, and underneath that I'm going to say private function and paste that name in there. Okay, and I can see I've spelled function wrong, so let's fix that. Function. And it does take a parameter. We're going to take the actual data itself. So this will take the data, and I'll make sure to pass it in here too. I forgot to do that. So we're taking this data in the loop and then passing it into here, and then we'll create the HTML for this thumbnail. So there's a couple of things we want. We just want the ID, which is going to be the data and then ID column, because remember this data contains the MySQL data, so you need to specify the column you want to get. Copy and paste that below. Actually copy it 3 more times. There's 4 things we want. So we want the URL of the image, so this can just be file path, because in the thumbnails table, if I just remind you, right here, thumbnails, we have this file path column. We want the video ID, so the ID of the video that this is for, so video ID, and then lastly we want the whether it's selected or not. So selected, and then this is just going to be the selected row right here, which is 1 or 0 depending on whether it's in use or not. So selected, and that's it. We have those values. Great. Let's just output some HTML. So just return, and inside there we'll just create one div. So div, and then the class is going to be thumbnail item. And in fact what we'll do is we'll give it another class depending on whether this is selected or not. So selected, we're going to change it slightly. We're going to say selected equals this, and then equals 1, and a question mark, and then selected, and then after that we'll say colon, and then just empty double quotes. And this just means that if this is 1, it's going to set the selected variable as selected like this. If it's not 1, so it's not in use, it will just be an empty string. And inside here in the class part we'll just say selected like that. So if it's selected, it will add the class selected to this. If it's not selected, it won't. And this is going to be used to, so we can put a border around the one which is selected. I'll close that div off right now before I forget, and then we'll come back up to here and we'll do a on click. So what happens when it's pressed? So when the user clicks on this, we'll say set new thumbnail, which is a function we haven't wrote yet, but we'll do that very shortly. And it will take a thumbnail ID, which we know is just going to be ID, this variable right here. It will take a video ID, which we know we can say is a video ID, which comes from here. And I just spelled that wrong, so video ID. And the last thing it needs is the actual thumbnail item itself, so this HTML, and we'll say this like that. Great. And remember to put the closing parentheses on that. And then all we need to do underneath that, we'll just create the image. So img and src equals, and then the URL for the file path. And that's it. So this now will contain all the HTML of those videos. So let's just return this, but we'll do it inside another div. So return, and in double quotes we'll say div class equals thumbnail items container. And I'll close the div off as well. Put a semicolon, and inside there I'll just put the HTML. And that's it. So let's refresh the page now, and hopefully we'll see some thumbnails. Let me refresh it, and we'll see these 3 thumbnails. Great.